acquired for $1.8 million per acre.
Oh, wow.
That was really expensive land. But we had to do it in order to move forward and serve more people. At the time that we were acquiring all those properties, we also started to search for additional parcels of land that we could potentially use for a future second campus. And I don't know, Kristen, if you were on the board at that time. It's like, yeah, I thought so. It's like, Dan, you may have been on the board at that time. But we got in the bus, got in the Oaknoll bus, and it's like, when we first put this out, we probably received about 50 different proposals. Hey, come look at our land, come look at our land. And we narrowed that down, and it's like we got our board members on the Oaknoll bus and toured probably about 8 different properties one day that we had kind of narrowed the list down to. This property was actually one of the ones that we looked at, the Larson Farm. And we ended up dismissing it because at that time, what we believed to be true was that we were going to build a complete second campus. So independent living, assisted living, nursing care, and on this site, being only, well, I don't remember exactly what the acreage is, but we just couldn't imagine a way that we could have the entire continuum housed here in this land. So we passed on this and ultimately ended up buying land from the Davis family. Florence Davis, their mother, was an Oaknoll resident at the time. And so we ended up acquiring about 30 acres of land that is called Oaknoll West. Back in 2012, when we bought that land, I absolutely believed that by now we would have a second campus at Oaknoll West. And what has not happened since then, the intervening 10 years, is the city, even though that piece of property was in the city's long-range plan for the expansion of Iowa City, that has never happened. So there is still no road improvement, no water, no sewer to that side of the interstate. So until that happens, we just have land that we really can't do anything with. We will hold on to that land because eventually, I do believe those infrastructure improvements will get to that side of the interstate. And whenever that happens, our land becomes much more valuable, whether we're going to do anything with it or not. So we're sitting on that land that's Oaknoll West, and eventually that may be a campus. But it was acquired basically, and we were looking at this property along with many, many other parcels. So let me go back here. So we started this building project in December of 2012, opened it in June of 2015, and ended up with a really nice result. People liked these apartments, and the wait list kept growing. So we'll get to that in a second. Can you see that okay? Yeah. Okay. So this is just looking kind of year by year, what number of people were on the wait list. Thank you. So we started to market this spring building at a time that there were roughly 140 households on the wait list. That was going to add 70 apartments. Construction on the spring building happened from late 2012 through summer of 2015. And by the time we finished construction, even though we had signed a whole bunch of contracts here in this time period, the wait list had grown to 166. So we moved people in, and people liked what they saw with spring building, and the wait list kept growing again. And it's like right before we did the work to explore this project, our wait list had gotten to a little over 200 households. Our reality at that time was the main campus was full. Spring building, just like this building, tended to attract younger residents, so you wouldn't expect turnover of apartments to happen very quickly. And So we've got a lot of people who want to become Oaknoll residents. No chance for that to happen because we're full, and so we started to look for other options. And I'm gonna skip around a little bit. The option that was right in front of us was One University Place. So it's like this development is 5 blocks away from the main campus. It was, at the time that it opened in 2018, a 77-unit condo building, and I think there were only like 5 or 6 pre-sales or households living there. And I would drive by the sign on the corner of Melrose and Sunset several times a week and say, I wonder what it's like. And one day I ended up just calling the phone number for those condos and talked to Tim Conroy. He was the broker that was handling the sale for the developers. And Tim and I got together, and when I walked through this building, it felt very similar to our spring building. Some of you, I'm sure, have been and visited friends in One University Place. So lots of natural light, lots of glass, and we had this building 5 blocks away from Oaknoll that was pretty much empty, and a very long wait list. So also at that time, we had just given up apartments up on 3rd floor of Oakcrest, directly above the health center, to make way for the memory care area or the loft. And so my initial ask of our board was, let me try to acquire 6 units just to replace the 6 that we had given up. That happened relatively quickly. We found matches, and the first people to live in One University Place as an Oaknoll resident, just whatever the purchase price of that unit was, that's what their entrance fee was. So there was no additional debt. It just, okay, we're going to pay $370,000 for this unit. Your entrance fee is $370,000. We're paying $520,000 for this unit. Okay, your entrance fee is $520,000. And we found the matches, 13 households over 2018 and 2019 that wanted to become Oaknoll residents and chose to do it here, and that has worked out really well. I'm going to come back a step now. In the 2018 strategic plan, where I said there's nothing in that plan document that kind of notes a development here at East, what is in the plan document is that we needed to have a vision for where Oaknoll was going. So the charge to me was, hey, let's create a vision statement. And the summer of 2018, I hosted a series of dinners with our board members, and we just talked about what do they think Oaknoll should be looking like in the coming years, and kind of distilled that into 10 themes that I took from these conversations, and then ultimately we distilled that further into this vision statement, which is kind of long, but there's 5 main points to it. I'm not going to read everything, but at the beginning, Oaknoll will fulfill the life care promise to its residents and will strengthen its position as the premier retirement community in the Iowa City Corba area by boom, 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 and then it's like the last 2 really apply to East. Growing the Oaknoll community by adding independent living options away from the main campus. Again, because we're landlocked, we don't want to try to keep acquiring properties, and centralizing health services on the main campus with a plan to expand assisted living and the health center as needed. So that's the first point, and then the second, ensuring that all new development ideas contribute positively to the financial health of the Oaknoll community. We could not go do something that wasn't going to be a net gain for the entire Oaknoll. This is important because as we got to thinking about the space that we had here at East and how to use that space, one of the things that was rattling around in my head was, is there a way that we can make some of these spaces assisted living? And we maximized the number of units that we could have from a zoning perspective. There are 60 apartments here. That is the most that we could have. You can make an argument that we should have some of those 60 be allocated to assisted living rather than all 60 independent. The challenge there is how do you staff it correctly, or what's the right number if you do only like 10 or 12 assisted living apartments, you know, up to 20% of the community here as assisted living. That's not a very good use of resources. Staff would be way underutilized for assisted living if we only had that number of units. And if you go up to 20 or 25 or 30 assisted living apartments, then it becomes a very different feel for the entire community. So we ultimately landed that, hey, we are going to consciously centralize health services on the main campus. We're going to tell everybody as we start to have people living independently at One University Place or at East that this is only independent living. When you need health services, that is provided as part of your life care contract, but we do that at the main campus because we can do that efficiently there and very inefficiently here. So I hope that makes sense, but that was the thinking. So One University Place we talked a little bit about, and then just kind of getting into the timeline. So early 2018, this wasn't even a thought. We didn't know what was happening at that point. Was Kevin Hannick was trying to finalize plans to build this campus as high-end condos. So Kevin is good friends with one of our spring building residents. He had been in that person's apartment many, many times, liked the architecture, liked the feel of the spring building, and he ended up hiring Mark Siebold from Shibe Hattery. Mark was the architect who designed our spring building, and Kevin and Mark really had plans for doing high-end condos here. And this is what it was going to look like. Pretty similar to what we ended up with. The major differences are here. This room, as high-end condos, actually would have been down below, and there would not have been a restaurant, there wouldn't have been a reception area or anything like that. So there was still plans to have a common area space, but everything else was just high-end condos. Come back here. So they had these plans going, and just about the time that Kevin was trying to get financing to break ground on this project, they had plans, they had zoning done, they were ready to start building, and they couldn't get the money to do it. And One University Place plays a huge role in that because just at the time that Kevin was trying to develop this property, One University Place hits the market with 77 condos that are sitting there empty. So that's a big number for the Iowa City community to absorb all at once, and thinking about adding another 50 or 60 kind of in that same market. Kevin just struggled to get the financing that he needed to move forward with that project. So he, through his relationship with his friend in the spring building, knew about our wait list, knew a little bit about Oaknoll and how we worked, and so Kevin approached me in early 2018 and just asked if I'd be willing to sit down and talk about some options. And what Kevin initially offered was that he would either build this building and sell individual units to us as we needed, kind of what we were doing at One University Place, or we could purchase the entire campus from him. He would be the developer, build the building, and we would purchase the whole thing from him. Or if that didn't work, how about just renting the campus with an option to purchase at some future time? So, okay, lots to think about, and I started conversations then with our board of directors, and it's like I think it was probably May of 2018, had a powwow with our executive committee and Kevin and Mark, and just tried to figure out what this could look like. There was enough positive energy around that idea that we started to pursue it. And really from June of 2018 through November of 2018, we were building financial models. We were trying to figure out with our bank if we could get the financing that we needed. Remember, we had just finished off a major construction project, a $50 million construction project that just opened in 2015. And could we get another wave of permanent financing? So we were doing kind of some things related to this project, but kind of feeling it out. In November of 2018, the board actually approved the purchase agreement, and initially, Kevin and Hodge Construction were going to build this building, and when it was finished, we would write a check and buy it from them. I am very, very, very glad that it turned out differently. I think that would have been a disaster for a number of reasons, but it's like over time things kind of morphed into what we have now. But in November of 2018, the board approved us to move forward, and we were going to purchase a finished product from Kevin. December 14th, I went back to my Outlook calendar today and found the exact meetings. So we had December 14th was a Friday. We met with a group of waitlist households that Friday. We met with another group of waitlist households the following Monday and the following Wednesday, trying to tell the story of what this could be and gauge interest. And there seemed to be interest, and we kept moving forward. January of 2019, I really don't remember this at all, but it had to have just been a whirlwind, because between the time that we did those informational meetings just before Christmas and our board meeting in January 30th was a board meeting day, we had signed 29 contracts. So I did go back and look at my calendar for January, and there were a lot of days that I was meeting with 2 and 3 households, and it just says, meet with this household, sign contract, meet with this one, sign contract. So it was a rush because we needed to either get to the right number that we could actually move forward or pull the plug on it if there wasn't going to be enough interest. So we were very busy through the month of January, and by the time we got to that January board meeting, we had basically half of this campus sold already. And that gave us permission, or the board gave me permission then to move forward with both phases of the project. So this side of the campus, buildings 1 and 2, were going to be phase 1. If there was sufficient interest later on, we would do phase 2, which is building 3. We got there very quickly, and the board said, yep, let's just go ahead, execute the agreement, and do the entire campus. So we have a go decision, and from there, the next 4 months were kind of lots of frustration. So I don't know how many times I met with Kevin and Midwest One Bank, and we were still trying to figure out Kevin's financing to build the building that we had sold now, so that we could get underway with construction. And ultimately, that financing package never happened, and it morphed into, let's just buy Kevin out. So at this point, it was easier for Oaknoll to get the financing than it was for Kevin to. And so we, in our agreement, we changed some things. Ended up paying Kevin a developer's fee to buy all of the plans, to buy all of the work that had happened up to that point, to buy the land, and essentially buy him out of the project, and we became the owner of it from day one. So experienced the construction process and making finish selections and changes and different things like that. And if we were trying to do that through a third party, it would have just been a disaster. So it was much easier. It's like, I'm not saying that it was easy. Those of you who lived through it know that it was a challenge, but it would have been even more challenging had we needed to run everything through a different owner who was building this building for us. Any questions so far? I'm just flat. Yeah.
While you were doing your planning and probably executing, and at any point did we consider our good neighbor ACT and the considerable not only development but additional property that they cost?
Yep. So the question is, at any point in the planning, did we consider the neighbor ACT and perhaps talk with them about like maybe more land or whatever? I would have to say early in this process, no. We just knew that the parcel that we were interested in was surrounded by land that ACT owned. Since then, I have had, and I heard today there's rumors that we have a purchase agreement or we're buying land from ACT's parking lot, and yeah, all y'all can say that, but there is no agreement. so I've spoken with the CEO at ACT and their main facilities person to let them know that we would be interested, perhaps, if they were looking to sell some land immediately contiguous to us, and most likely the parking lot area immediately north. They held an open house right before Christmas this past year, and I went there, and it's like that was my conversation with the CEO. Just, hey, we're potentially interested if you're looking to sell. And their business changed very significantly due to COVID. The parking lots are basically sitting there empty. I don't know that it would hurt them a whole lot to let us have some land at some point for a fair purchase price. But at least back in December, there was not a whole lot of interest in having that conversation. Since then, I know that they have sold some property. I think I've heard that.
So Tyler building.
Okay.
And possibly some additional space.
Yep. So that's a conversation that we'll certainly review and explore. But early on, it's like there really hadn't been any conversation, and there was no direct contact with ACT until December of 2021.
The land that I think we should take a peek at right now while they are doing this school district thing and so forth is the flat land directly north of Building 3 driveway. We own just a narrow strip, but in looking at the active people we have here, I see a need for more outdoor recreation, and that space would be something that could be bocce ball, it could be pickleball, it could be a tennis courts or whatever.
And Dee, is that the land directly north of your apartment?
No.
No, okay.
North
I'm not sure what the
north
of
the Building 3, go out their driveway, where the cars come out, and go directly north.
Yeah.
And it's a no man's land piece of land
Okay.
that's west of the parking lot.
It's not the parking lot. It's
Right.
west. Yeah, gotcha.
And nobody else can use it.
Yep.
It seems like a logical thing to look towards the future.
Yep.
Buy the land, maybe not develop it for a few years, whatever, but.
Yep, thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
so just hear me. I will reach out to ACT again and initiate those conversations. We're certainly interested in having more property here. So, yeah, thank you. Dan?
Steve, that land is the access that they used when they were doing the construction here.
Yep.
So that whole area was a road,
Yep.
and then they filled it in and they planted grass doubt whether ACT or any buyer of the property is planning to use it.
Yeah.
So to me, it's an ideal piece of land to possibly acquire for the purposes indicated.
Yep.
And it would fit right in with what we have here.
Right, yep, absolutely. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna keep going. So we get through kind of the turmoil was trying to figure out financing and ultimately come to an agreement with Kevin and buy him out of the project. May 29th, some of you were in the audience that day as we held a groundbreaking ceremony kind of up at the north end of the property. That is Mark Priest. Mark was the president of our board during that time. We closed on financing the next day, and then construction started really right away. The certificate of occupancy for buildings 1 and 2, we got in October of 2020 and February of 2021 for building 3. As I went back and looked at everything, I know that Dan and Ann had an apartment on hold, but they weren't actually the first people to sign a contract. That was Marilyn Larson. And then Lois, you were that afternoon. So we had 2 contracts signed on January 9th. And then our very last apartment contract was signed by Linda Nauman on April 27th. Okay, I know she has moved in already, but it's like, yeah, I don't see her this one. I think this was one of the very best moves that we made, and Steve had been with us for probably close to 15 years at the point that he became the site manager here. Steve started his Oaknoll career as a driver in our transportation area, soon became the transportation manager. When technology got to be too much for me to do kind of as a side gig, Steve became our technology department, and he was our technology manager kind of as a one-person department for a while, and then we grew that staff as it was needed, and then in April of 2020 we made it official that Steve had been hired as the site manager here. And that was very helpful, so and Steve kind of helped a lot with all the details related to finishing a construction project, which still has some issues. We completely understand. Also, in that time period, some of the things that we were doing included revising the building plans. So when we started to talk with our waitlist households about this project, there was an apartment that doesn't actually exist here. And I'm going to go back. It was intended to be these end units, and they were going to be massive apartments. They're almost 2,600 square feet. The largest apartments we have here now are just under 1,700 square feet, so add another 1,000 square feet to your home. And there were going to be 3 of these. Because of the size of them, they were just ridiculously expensive. I think the 2-person entrance fee for this size apartment we had priced at maybe around $700,000, and not surprisingly, we did not sign any contracts for that size apartment, and so because of where it was intended to be located and not having any occur, we split this apartment, did a little bit of modification to the building, and ended up splitting these end units into 2 D-type apartments, which were much more sellable. And if we had space for more D apartments, we would have had more households living in that size because it's very popular. So that was one of the things that changed along the way, and just kind of changed the dynamics a little bit. And finally, we get to having 60 households call Oaknoll leased home now. And we are here. That's the story from my perspective. I'm sure each of you has your own unique story depending on when you came into the project. For the most part, it's like I think pretty positive. There were definitely some bumps in the road, some people that we have chosen not to work with going into the future because of just like some of the experiences that we've had. But it's life. We learn from it, move on, and try to do better the next time. So that's all of my presentation part. I am happy to take questions related to this, or if there's other things that are on your minds. Pete?
Another pitch for covering the pergolas. They tend to let the rain in and don't keep the sun out. You know, a hard roof, I think the structure is strong enough to hold a roof by about 14 stories. It would be nice to use solar panels on the roof so you'd have a boost there, but I think even more interesting, at least to me, more and more residents are coming up with electric cars, and I've heard that you're a little deficient in charging stations. If you use solar panels to give a bit of shade in the parking area, you could have automatic during the day charge stations, all you need is just a thought.
Thank you for that thought. We can certainly explore that.
Keep the bird poop off of the furniture tables.
Oh. Yeah.
Agreed.
So, yeah, I hear you on the pergolas. They look pretty, but it's like probably not as functional as a different design. So thank you for that. So you know, and some of you know Gary Pasha and Karen Franklin, and we have explored in the last 6 months or so looking at adding solar panels onto some of the flat roofs at the main campus. The economics of it makes 0 sense. So, and that's really kind of the stumbling block for us. One of the proposals for a building was going to cost about $800,000 for the equipment, and it would save us $30,000 per year in energy usage. That $800,000, if you are a for-profit entity, you can get tax incentives that would make that cost not be $800,000 and be more like $450,000. But still, even at that level, just the base economics of it makes 0 sense. So know that we have explored solar, and when it makes economic sense, perhaps we will move forward with it, but from what I've seen so far, it's a hard sell. If we have people who want to contribute $800,000 to allow us to save $30,000 a year, like, hey, I'm all for that. I want to be energy efficient, but I don't think it would be a good use of your collected $800,000 to save $30,000 a year. So, okay. Other questions?
This is another question. With all graciousness, I would like to thank you, and I think most of the community would hear. This is home for me. Yeah.
Thank you. That is what we are all about. And I don't want to put Lucille on the spot here, but it's like some of you know that it's like our corporate values have the acronym CREATE: caring, respect, enthusiasm, awareness, teamwork, and encouragement. We are finally, after a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, doing training sessions again. Those training sessions have been historically in my house with groups of about 10 to 12 staff people, usually a resident, and sometimes a board member that participates. Lucille just was in my house last Thursday for a training session, and I just want to extend that invitation. If any of you are ever interested in seeing the training that we do with our staff on our CREATE values and how we try to help our staff understand what we're doing is creating home, you are more than welcome. Just let me know, and we will get you scheduled. So,
It's very obvious by how they react and treat us
Exactly.
that the training has sunk in,
that's awesome.
and you cannot imagine how helpful these people are. I mean, you probably can. You do a good job training.
Well, thank you.
Because we all feel
And
it.
I think,
We all feel
hiring
it.
Steve as our site manager,
Yeah.
he is somebody who's been with us for a long, long time,
Yeah.
absolutely gets who we are and who we aspire to be, and he kind of sets the tone for all of our staff here, so.
Yeah, well, it's clear.
Thank you.
Very obvious.
Thank you.
Was there anything that blindsided you? The most blindsiding thing.
So with each construction project that we've done, we think that we've learned something. And I remember back to the George building construction, which opened in 2006, and the new residents there had to, or had to, however you want to interpret that, pick all of their finishes. So flooring, cabinetry, countertops, faucets, absolutely everything. That was a little bit of a challenge to manage. So when we got to the spring building in 2015, we intended to simplify things, and some of the stuff was standardized, like faucets and sinks and stuff, but they still had choices for flooring, cabinets, and countertops. That worked a little bit better. What we wanted to do here was have pallets and have people pick from a pallet, which in theory was a great idea. In execution, it's like not so much, because it just doesn't work. It's like people want what they want, and especially when you got 4 pallets sitting in opposite corners of the room, and you can see, oh, I really like the countertop that's over here, but I'm in this pallet. So it's like, it was kind of silly, it's like that we even tried to do that. And I'm sure that we will, it's like when we do another construction project, which at some point will probably happen, we'll be smarter again, or think we will be, and then it'll blow up on us and we'll react. But that was one kind of surprise that it's like I thought it would work better than it did. And like, not so much, but yes, Terry.
What companies will you never work with again? I'm serious.
I don't think you can say.
One of them has been mentioned in this presentation. Yeah. And it's just because of huge frustrations with lack of attention to detail. All of you experienced as the end customer the finished selection process, and it was supposed to be very smooth, and it's like, and the product that we got from the people who were paying to do this service was just absolute garbage. There were things that it's like I felt like I needed to, or Retha needed to review absolutely every word on every page because your names were misspelled. We would meet with you, with representatives from that firm, and it's like they couldn't even get your name right. And that's really, really frustrating when it's like there's all these details going into your ultimate end unit, and you can't spell your name correctly. So, yeah, that says something. So. Anything else?
If you do acquire additional land,
Yes.
will it be used for assisted living?
That's, yeah, so I still, it's like, I still don't believe that it will make sense for us to do licensed nursing home care on this site. I just don't think we can ever get to enough spaces where that would make sense. I do think that it's like if we can acquire the right amount of property and we have the money to do this, building a small assisted living kind of cottage with maybe 15 to 20 apartments. I think that could be a nice transition point for people here, that when they need that service, instead of going 4 miles across town, they go 40 feet across, across that way. I don't know, it's probably a little more than 40 feet, but it's like, yeah, something closer. So that's certainly something that we're considering. The major project that we got going right now, and the main thing in our current strategic plan, is figuring out the replacement and the expansion of assisted living and the expansion of the health center. Because not too many of you need it now, but 10 years from now, a certain percentage of you will need assisted living services or nursing services. And if it all hit at once today, we don't have enough capacity. We've known that for a long time, and it's been part of the plan to build that capacity. We still have time, but that is clearly the #1 priority for us right now. Our assisted living lives in the 56-year-old part of our building. There's not a whole heck of a lot that we can do architecturally or from a renovation standpoint to change the fact that the ceiling is 7 feet tall. And I feel like a giant walking down the hallway because I'm a little over 6 feet. And it's just like, it is a 56-year-old building with 56-year-old plumbing and electrical, and it needs to be replaced, so that's what we're working towards. So, yes.
Don't forget, we love our cats.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And that is something that's like, pets are, it was really easy to do it here with brand new construction. I hope that I am retired before that becomes issue of how to integrate pets into a historically non-pet building. And it's so dumb, but like the idea of changing it midstream or 50 years into our history, it seems like a really simple thing, but there are people who waited and waited to come to Oaknoll until after their pets died, and even though they're not losing anything, there's a perception that they lost something if we start to allow it for their next door neighbor. So it's like, I don't know how to deal with it. It's like, from a transition standpoint, it was much, much easier to just say, this building, that building, and that building are pet friendly,
Right.
This one is not pet friendly. So, yeah, Ken?
How are things developing with your therapy dog?
With my personal dog?
Right.
Yeah.
The one that you brought?
Yep. She's doing well. Thank you for asking. So Lucy is 7 months old now. From the time that we got her at 8 weeks, and starting at about 10 or 11 weeks, I started to bring her into Oaknoll pretty much on a weekly basis to socialize and start to get to know residents, and it's like just part of her training. We've done puppy class, and we're 5 weeks into an 8-week obedience class, and most of the time she's pretty good. It's like she loves people, and it's like she absolutely knows to sit and wait to be sitting to begin petting, and it's just been so much fun. If I had remembered how much work it is to have a puppy, however, I don't know that we would have had a puppy. She is sleeping through the night now, so it feels like we're new parents. So she's an English Golden Retriever. So she's 7 months old, and she's probably about 65 pounds right now, and strong as an ox. So if she decides that she doesn't want to go someplace, she doesn't go. But we're working through that. Yes, Kate.
Most people are not aware of this, but I do not drive. And Tony is my next best friend.
Yeah, that's
He is,
great.
I can go over there or call at night and say, can you pick me up? I swim in the morning, and sometimes I need a ride to, North Dodge. He is so accommodating, very much like yourself.
Well, good. Thank you. I appreciate that, Kate.
Big hurrah.
And so a question came up before the meeting started related to transportation, and a disappointment that there wasn't a shuttle going back and forth all day long. there is service all day long. We're not running a shuttle back and forth
Right.
if nobody is signed up for that service. So all you have to do to get a ride from here to any place in the Iowa City Oracle Market, including the main campus, is just say, hey, Wednesday morning
Right.
at 10 o'clock, I want to leave here, and we'll make sure that you have that transportation. So please just call our transportation manager, Tony, extension 3009, let him know where you want to go, and it's like, they'll make sure that somebody is here to pick you up.
And they do a very good job, very accurate and everything. I really appreciate it.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right, any last questions, Terry?
Regarding assisted living renovations, do you have some type of an end date when that might be completed?
Yeah, so what we wrote in the plan was that like we're gonna use this year, this calendar year, to explore the options, try to have something that makes sense by the end of 2022. In the first half of 2023, figure out how we're going to pay for that project. So secure financing, and hopefully break ground on whatever that turns out to be by the end of 2023. So within the next 2 years, we should, if things go the way that we want them to, should be under construction with that expansion. So, yep. And just so you know, and plan for this, I will come asking you for money. I'm going to put it out there right now, because if you think about our business model, and we are going to forget about expanding anything, but just replace unit for unit, 56-year-old assisted living apartment with a brand new assisted living apartment. You don't pay any more to go from this space to this space, but Oaknoll has just incurred about, let's say conservatively, $10 million of construction cost. How do you, I don't get married to these numbers because I don't know what the numbers are yet, but there will be some construction cost, and unless we raise some money to help us pay for that project, it's hard to justify doing it. How are we going to pay for it long term? So a part of the answer, I hope, is that we will receive generous contributions into the Oaknoll Foundation to help us pay for the project. And a part of the answer will be, as we have every other time we've ever expanded, we do some additional independent living apartments, because that is new incremental revenue that will help us pay for it. So it'll be some combination, and my hope is that by early 2023, we have a really nice slideshow to show you where your contributions will go if you're able to do that and help us with that project. It's investing directly in your future lives at Oaknoll. 2/3 of you, if history holds true, 2/3 of you will need either assisted living or nursing service before you die. So it's investing in your future environment. So, okay. Yeah, Kristen.
Steve, are you still thinking of expanding assisted living into the central portion of?
Not so. Kristen's question is: are we still thinking about expanding assisted living into the central building? So if you're familiar with our main campus, the original 1966 construction is where assisted living lives, first and second floor. In 1968, there was an addition to Oaknoll, the very first addition, and that's the central building, 3rd and 4th floors. It is independent living apartments, and the thought at one point was like that would be the natural, if we need to expand assisted living, that would be the natural place to do it. The apartments are similar. We have basically the exact same challenges with that 1968 building as we have with the 1966 building. It's 50 plus years old. It also has 7-foot ceilings, and ultimately we'd love to replace that. Both of those things are challenging because they're occupied buildings. So we have to have some place to move people to before we can do what's next for those spaces. So we're trying to figure that out. It's like we're working with an architectural firm out of Cedar Rapids called OPN. They do have senior living experience and have been really good to work with so far, and we'll keep exploring options. But that one really would only be kind of a fallback position now if we can't figure out either what to do or just can't make it happen. So, yeah, Dee.
I'm a little confused with this. Where do you have open land? You know, do you have some? I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yeah, where do we have open land? The only real open land that we have is used for parking. So there's that land. There's land here between the Oak Crest building, assisted living, and the central building. There's parking here. So it's a challenge. It's a very significant logistical challenge, and we've got smart people trying to help us figure it out. Yep. Yeah. And there's also the reality, kind of what we dealt with the spring building. All of these surrounding areas are either single-family homes or apartment buildings that will cost a pile of money if they believe that we have to have their property. So we're trying to figure out what can we do on land that we already own rather than try to acquire property we don't.
Are those numbers the houses that you own?
They are, yep. So if you're, yep. So we have these three on the north side of Oak Crest, a couple there, another one here, the duplex and the single-family home on the west side of Spring, and then someplace down here on Wild Green, there's another house that we own. Yep.
What's the location and status of Oaknoll West?
So the location is, if you drive past Menards and take the first right that you possibly could, that's Kitty Lee Road. And take Kitty Lee Road ends as a dead end in about a mile or so, maybe 3/4 of a mile from that intersection. On the left-hand side is 30 acres of land that we own. There's about a 7-acre pond on that property, which we thought was appealing when we were hoping to build something there. Right now, that pond gets used to fish. So if any of you are fisher people, it's like go out to the Oaknoll West land. And, yeah. But we own it. It's like there's no use for it right now, but we will hold on to it until something happens out there. So.
How much did you pay for that?
How much did we pay? Did we pay for it, or are we paying for it?
Well, you bought
Yep, we bought it. So that 30-acre parcel was, I think, $635,000. Yeah. So we had it appraised, and the Davises just agreed to sell it for whatever the appraised value was, and it appraised as basically on idle farm land, and I think it was like $17,000 an acre, something like that.
Well, the Tyler building was a great bargain, right?
Yeah.
And it's too bad.
Okay. Yep. All right.
Well, what did you do?
Thank you.